Good morning, everyone. I'm Michael. I'm going to be your host for around about the next 45 minutes. We're looking at statements and letters in Sage 50 accounts this morning. So I'll give you an idea of what's available and how you go about generating those. Right now, it is just myself running this session with you all today. So I'll be doing the talking, the demos, and also answering the questions along the way as well. So I'll try and pick those up, but do bear with me. Just quite a short, small session today, so we don't have that many of you logged in. Just about to get into double figures there, so quite a small number of attendees today. So hopefully I'll get a chance to get round to your question if you have any, but do bear with me on that one. Now, just in case you haven't attended one of our webinars before, you don't need a microphone for these sessions. If you've got one and you've enabled it, you'll just be muted automatically. You can't unmute yourself during this session, so you can't speak to me. But you will be able to type your questions into the questions panel. To access the questions panel, you just need to click that little icon on the toolbar, the one that looks like a speech bubble containing the question mark. Give it a click. It'll expand the panel. You get the box in the bottom right-hand corner then. So any comments or questions, pop them in there and I'll try my best to pick those up. Now, if anyone wants a copy of today's slides, that one should be available. Yeah, that one is available for you. So there's very little information on the slides. There's a couple of useful links across to our Help Center articles, which, to be honest, are easy to find anyway. But if you do want a copy, specifically a copy of the slides, you can download them. Now, afterwards, so round about an hour after we finish the session today, you will receive a further email that will include a number of links as normal. So links to register for our upcoming webinars. I'll tell you a little bit about some of the topics we got planned in a little bit later on in the session. There'll be a link to our recordings as well. So if you need a bit of a recap, including on today's session, then those are available as well. We're in the process of redesigning that web page as well with the recordings on, just to try and make things a little bit easier for you to find, so you're not endlessly scrolling down that screen. So it's a bit of a work in progress at the moment, that one. But have a look and let us know what you think if you get a chance as well. So that hopefully that development should be finished by the end of this week. Right, okay. So this is what I'm going to be covering today. So as mentioned, covering statements and letters. So a little bit of an introduction to the webinar itself. We'll then have a quick look at statements, spend a bit of a typo on that slide there. I think we're going for overview and introduction on that one. So statements, we're going to be looking at a little bit of background, demonstration, and then we'll do the same for letters. Now, to be honest, if statements a little bit different, probably more likely that you are going to use the statements area out of the two. Letters is one of those that's often overlooked, and you can use it for a number of purposes. A mail shot, sending out a sort of a festive greeting type thing at Christmas, you might do that. So it can be used for a number of purposes. It doesn't have to necessarily be, look, you've got this outstanding balance, we need payment as soon as possible. There can be other uses for that as well. So if you all want to do that mail shot, you never know, you could design that sort of email within the Sage Report Designer. So it is very flexible what you can do with that. Again, we'll run through a little bit of a demonstration of some of the letters that are available for you. And then we'll finish today's session just by running through the additional support that's available to you. And if there are any outstanding questions or you have any that you think of at the last minute, I'll try and pick those up towards the end. But do keep your comments and your questions coming if you want to engage with me as we go. So a little bit of background first, and if you've used Sage for quite some time, you should be aware that obviously it's easy to generate your documents. You've got two output options that you're likely to use, printing or emailing. Yes, you can save to file, you can send the information to Excel, but printing or emailing it when we're talking about statements and letters is probably where you're going to go with that. Now, in both areas, both statements and letters, there are loads of standard layouts that are provided. Some will probably be of no use to you whatsoever. And in the area of statements, which we'll see in a moment, there's loads of those, and it's probably the biggest challenge is finding the one that best suits what you're after. So we'll be running through that as well and tell you a little bit about the differences as we go. Now you can use the report designer to tailor the look of and the information also that's included on those statements and letters as well. And that's quite a big area in itself using the report designer. So loads of supporting information as you'd expect for that area. So if you're just wanting to add your logo to a layout, for instance, to include that on your statement layout, you can do that sort of thing. You can include additional text. You can draw boxes, lines. You can change fonts, colors, you name it. You can just about do it. It's a really powerful tool, that one. It's worth investing that time as well, just to make sure that it's right. One of the things I do say, if you're looking to edit that, always before you edit any template, whether it's an invoice layout, an order layout, a remittance, a statement, or a letter, or even label layouts, take a layouts only backup first. Now, I'm not going into the report design side today. We're just concentrating more on generating statements and letters and outputting them. Excuse me. But if you are going to be editing, do make sure you take that layouts only backup first. I can't stress that one enough. You don't want that heartache where you edit your layouts, you make a mess of it, and you think, oops, I've saved the changes. If you've got that layouts only backup, you could be up and running very, very quickly again. Whereas if you need to start again, and if you've ever touched the report designer, time can go by very, very quickly when you get in the realms of editing it. Now, there's loads of support resources available for you, whether it's webinars, there's loads of webinars recordings on the report designer as well, whether you just want basic advice on how to add a logo. So that type of information is available. Loads and loads of information in our help center. And if you can't work out what you need, or maybe you're just still a little bit unsure, or maybe you've got a question, is it possible to do this? Then our support team is on hand as well. Angela, you mentioned is there a webinar report designer? So we don't have any booked in at the moment. What we tend to go for recently is what we term the quick learn style webinars, where we're concentrating on a specific process. So those recordings are available. So watch out for your follow-up email. It will include the links that you need, so you can access those. But again, if you become unstuck, obviously our support team is there as well to assist. Right, let's get started with statements. Now, some of these slides have included these sort of green buttons at the bottom. So if you have downloaded a copy of the slides, then you obviously they'll be clickable and will take you across to the relevant article. Having said that, this information is easy to find. Now, we're going to look in a moment, we're going to run through a bit of a demo on generating statements. So a couple of things to look at before we get as far as actually selecting our statements or which layout we want to use is selecting your customers. Who do you want to send a statement to? Is it just across the board? Is it only certain ones? Are you wanting to split them? Maybe some you print, some you email. Maybe you haven't done any so far. And maybe you don't offer credit to the majority of your customers, just it's sort of you record them as a customer, but it's all cash there and then. So we're going to look at selecting your customers and how you go about that. And there's a couple of different selection styles to maybe look at as well, just in case you're struggling to select more than one customer. We'll run through that. You can also apply things like filters as well to help you choose certain customers. So if you have maybe a different template for your trade customers and a different sort of statement layout with maybe different terms at the bottom, different other information for your retail customers, you can do that. So you can say, right, filter your list so it displays trade only, select those ones, generate your statements, etc. Now, choosing your layouts, with regard to statements, there's loads of layouts there. I'll quickly run you through just so you can hopefully understand the differences. It will help you guide you through to the relevant one. Now, print versus email is always a common one when it comes to outputting. A common debate anyway. It's always one I would like to run a poll on as well. So I'll run that in just a moment, but I think traditionally, many years ago, because you've been able to email for years and years now, and we still come across loads of customers that are still printing. If you think about the time that takes you to do that, it can be a big time saver and cost saver as well, for that matter, if you start emailing. And switching across should be very easy. So I'm going to run a quick poll first of all, and I'll pop that on your screen. So if you do currently generate statements, how do you do that? Do you currently print them? Do you email them? Do you do a bit of a combination of print and email? Or currently, do you do neither? Maybe you haven't really done a statement run so far. Maybe you're just starting to offer credit, so you've never had to do statements before. So I'll just wait till I get a decent percentage of you having voted on that one. So you don't mind, just choose an option. It should have popped up on your screen there. Right, that's great. Okay, so it gives me a little bit of an idea. It's probably along the lines of what I expected. And I'll quickly share those results with you as well. You see from that there, 11% of you printing only. So when you output them. So potentially for those of you that are printing, if you are thinking about switching across to email, it can be a massive time saver. I think historically and I say historically, many years ago when I used to be on the customer services support team, we'd speak to customers that were doing a statement run, and that would take, sometimes depending how many customers you have, sometimes I've heard of that taking up to 2 days to complete a statement run. By the time you generate them, you output them, so you're printing them out on specific stationery, you're popping them in envelopes and sending them out. Whereas these days, if you switch to email, it's virtually an instantaneous process. And there's, it might take you. I've heard of it going from 2 days down to a couple of minutes, so it can be potentially a massive time saver. And nobody on the session today has said that they don't generate statements at all. Right, anyway, we'll hide that poll, and what we'll do, we'll get stuck into a little bit of the demo. So I'll share my screen and we'll start running through. Now, in customers, and some of you will be familiar with this already, that when you make your selection, so it's a bit like when you run reports as well. If you make your selection, so I do 4, for instance, and then I go and run a report or do a statement run, it will only base that report or statement run on the accounts that I've got selected. Now, the frustrating one we often find is that some people will say, well, actually, it's only generating 1. Why is that? And it's because you've got hundreds of accounts, and just what happens, you've got one selected that isn't on your screen. So if you want to make sure you've got nothing selected, click clear at the top. It will remove all highlights. If you then want to select everyone, you can just click swap, and then you can start removing those that you don't want to maybe send a statement to. Now, as far as sort of selecting accounts as well, there's a couple of ways you can do that, and it depends on your selection style that you've got specified in Sage. So I've got what you term the Sage selection style, which means I've got this sort of the on-off selection style when I'm clicking on records. So if I click on a record, it highlights it. If I click it again, it removes the highlight. So it's literally on-off switch. So if we go down the list, we can easily select them. If what you're finding is when you're trying to click onto another account, the highlight is following you, then you've got what's termed the Windows selection style. Now, what that means is you would need to use a combination of either your Shift key and clicking, so you can then click and highlight a range, or if you hold down the Control key while you're clicking, it will highlight the ones that you're clicking on. Now, if you wanted to switch to this, what we term the Sage selection style, where it's this on-off, I don't know if it's just because I've used it for so many years that I prefer this method. It's the one I've always tended to use, but that option for selecting records, you'll find within Tools and then Options. And if we go into the Environment tab at the top, so Tools, Options, then this Environment tab, and it's this option here. So as you can see, I've got mine set to the Sage selection style. If I just flick it across to the Windows selection style and click OK, go back to customers, and you'll see what I mean when I highlight this account. And then let's say I go to click on this business exhibitions. You can see as I click, the highlight follows me around. So selecting multiple records, you don't have to just select one, generate your statement. You can select more than that. So if I hold down my control key and just click in random places against records, then release the control key, it leaves them highlighted. Alternatively, if I highlight this, say this ABS Garages and this Group 2 account, if I hold down the Shift key and then click, it'll highlight sort of all of the records within that range. I'll just remove all highlights by clicking clear, and I'm going to switch it back to that Sage selection style. If you need to have a play around with that one, you can chop and change between that at any point. So Tools, Options, Environment tab, and then do that selection. The common one where you'll find that potentially an issue is often found within the bank reconciliation screen. If you're doing a manual reconciliation and you want to select more than one transaction. Again, it's down to that selection style. Anyway, we go into the customers, and what we're going to do is I'm going to make sure I've got nothing selected. So I'll clears grayed out, meaning I've got nothing selected. If it is active, it means that you've got something highlighted. It might not be on the screen, but you've got something specified. So I'm just going to click clear. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go into the statements. Now, you'll see on my toolbar, because of the resolution on my laptop, it's quite low to make things that bit bigger. But you can see on my toolbar, I've got this sort of what we term a grouped icon. And if I click this sort of bottom part of the icon, it will give me the access to the options that are grouped together. I've got one over here as well for new edit. But if I click that bottom part where it says documents and reports, you may have these options listed separately. But if I click that bottom part, I can then pop into statements. Now, when we go into statements, because it selects favorites by default, there's nothing listed by default either. We'll change that in a moment. But if we pop into layouts, you can see we've got this great big list of layouts. So these are layouts that have been added over the years. I think there used to be about 3 or 4 when I started. And it was all about, at the time, it was all about printing. So some of you did say you print only. Now, just to give you an idea, so when you come to generate your statements for the first time, I'll give you an idea about these sort of descriptions, sort of names of the accounts. So the ones that begin 11-inch, these were designed for your continuous stationery, your letter size stationery. Now, Sage, we haven't sold stationery for any software since the end of 2020. Everything really has gone via email. You can still buy stationery. It would match. It would normally indicate if it's compatible with Sage 50, your type of layout, etc. But these ones are designed for 11-inch stationery. Obviously, there's different descriptions as well. Some will say it will include a remittance section, but this is a 2-part stationery, so you've got that impact on your stationery. So you'll get the 2 parts. That was stationery that we used to sell. Some will be 11-inch statements with a tear-off remittance. So if you imagine your statement with a tear-off remittance at the bottom, that traditionally a customer would, when they make the payment, send a check back to you, if anyone still uses checks. Margaret, I'm assuming in your instance, there's probably still a check involved going off what you've mentioned there. So you've got tear-off remittance. You've got some which go way back, 2008. These begin A4, so these are from the 2008 version, just for compatibility with, I believe it was anyone upgrading from TASBooks, so that you would have a similar sort of format. So again, they're designed for A4. Some of them begin A4, obviously designed for A4 stationery. You've got some that are designed for email as well. and some which are also designed to work with what we used to term as the security mailer statements. So where you'd print them out and sort of close it, and it would seal it for you. So you didn't need envelopes for that type of thing. But again, Sage no longer sells stationery direct now. Now that's all to do with printing or emailing it, the sort of stationery that you would use. Now beyond that, you're going to see this quite a bit against each of them. Some will say grouped and all items. It will say grouped and OS items only. And then you'll see individual as well. Now the difference between grouped and individual, it depends on the level of detail that you want on your statement. So if I take an example, and I'm going to pick on this one here, this Group Green Limited, I've called it. If I have a look at the activity on this one, you can see I've got one invoice, but it has a breakdown. So there were 4 items on this invoice. So if we select this customer only and go into the statements area and into layouts, if I just choose a statement that says grouped, and I'll just sort of preview that one. I'll just accept all the default criteria for the time being as well. And so this is a grouped one. So what you would see on the main body of this statement is we see one item only. So a summary of that invoice. Obviously some invoices can be massive, the number of items on there. So that's a grouped one. So you get one line per invoice. So it groups all the items together. It's a bit like, and you'll have seen it in other areas of the software like activities, things like bank reconciliation. You might be familiar with grouping or showing grouped items or split items. Right, so that's a grouped one. Now, if you want to see individual items, so we'll just choose this one this time. It says individual in the name of it. And again, we'll just preview that one. Again, I'll just accept the default criteria. And this time, because it says individual in the description, what it's doing this time is showing you the breakdown. So it's showing me the individual items, the descriptions of what was on that particular invoice. Here we can see the reference, but it's showing me the descriptions and values, etc. Excuse me. So it depends on, I suppose, for when you come to decide this, it will, a lot of it will be determined by, I suppose, the level of detail for some of your customers. So do you want a 2-page statement, because there's a big breakdown, or you just is maybe just one line per invoice? Is that enough? And it's really for you to decide that. Is it likely if you just do a single line per invoice item that your customer's going to come back and start querying things? Often advantageous if you work in sort of a sector where possibly there's loads of disputes. So a customer can come back and say, right, well, actually the first 3 items I'm paying, but actually that one's in dispute at the minute, that one. So that's the difference between grouped and individual. Now the difference between all items and outstanding items only. Now this would, I often compare this one to a bank statement. So an all items statement would be all transactions that have taken place within the date range you specify when you run your statement. So if we just preview this one again as an example and choose your date range. Now you tend to find if you're doing an all items that you are going to specify a date range. So probably you tend to find that people do statements on a monthly basis, normally the last day of the month. So you can easily specify that. You've got this date picker tool as well. I'm not sure if this is massively used, this one, but clicking this little icon to the right of the date field, it will give you access to some of the more common sort of date ranges that you would select. So probably for statements, depends when you run it, of course, either this month or probably more likely if you're running a couple of days after the month end, the last month. And when you select that, it just pops in the relevant date range for you. You've also got this option here, exclude later payments. Now, if anyone has attended the aged debtors sessions before, you'll be aware of exclude later payments. So if you're retrospectively generating a statement, so let's say I was trying to generate a customer statement, maybe they'd lost it and they want a copy. Let's say I was generating a statement as at the end of August. What I would do is I would set my date range accordingly, and then I would tick that checkbox. If you're just doing it right up to the current date, you tend to find you probably wouldn't bother with that because you're not going to have any future receipts normally. So you just leave it blank. But if you're doing it retrospectively, so backdating the period that you're running it for, you're probably going to select this one. Anyway, just going back to the all items, which was in the description, if I just OK that, what it's going to do is it's going to show me all transactions that appear within that period. Whereas an O/S items only is going to show me outstanding items only. So I just go back to this screen again, and what we've got, I've got two accounts. One has a balance, one doesn't. So if I look at this second account, have a look at the activity, you'll see that on the activity, we've got an invoice dated with today's date, and we've got a receipt with today's date. So overall, the balance is 0. So when I generate statements, would I want to send this customer a statement or not? And this is where when you come to generate your statements, again, this will help you decide. Do I want to show all items within the period? So if I just quickly preview that one, I'll just do the current month only. Okay, that. And what we see is we get, in this case, we've got one page only. But it's showing me, in this case, the invoice and the payment. So it's showing me all transactions that have appeared in that period. So it's almost a bit like your bank statement. You see all the movement on the account within the period specified. Now, if we were to generate an invoice that is outstanding items only, and I just generate that one, again, I'll do that for the current month. Exactly what I was expecting. It's telling me this report could not be generated. No data was returned for this report. So what it's saying is, for this account, there's nothing outstanding in the period that we specified. So therefore, it doesn't include it. It doesn't generate a statement. So it's not going to generate a blank statement that you would email out, or you print out and you've got the headings only. So it's filtering it for you. So when it comes to statements, that's the key. Make sure you've got the right one selected. What is it you're wanting to show? Now, I would love to say this is by far the most common one, but it does vary. Depends on sort of business sector. Do you want to see all items within the period, or do you want to see, like, this is what you owe us, the outstanding items only? This is the current state of play. Now, when you find the layout that you're going to be using, so I'm going to say a grouped and outstanding items only. I'll choose this one. Flag it as your favorite. Saves you having to come in and find the one that you're after. What it means is that when you come into statements, because it defaults to your favorites folder, it'll show the one that you've got selected. Now, as far as generating them at that point, just a case of you could preview them first. Obviously, you can send them directly off to the printer. So those of you that did say you were either printing only or doing a combination of printing and emailing, so that's an option for the ones that you want to print. If you want to email them as well, and this is where I suppose the big time saver is, big cost saver as well, potentially. It will, by default, it will split them. So for each customer where it generates an email or generates a statement, it will attach that to an individual email. So it's not going to send the whole, all of you. You don't have to do, what I'm trying to say is you don't have to run your statements one at a time. So you don't have to select your first customer into statements, output that to email. Just run them in a batch. So if, for instance, I selected, let's say I select all of my customers, including the ones with zero balances at this stage, go into statements, and I say, right, I want to output that to email. I'll select the current month. Okay, that. Little progress bar. Tells me it's been successfully output to email. I just okay. And I get a prompt, do you want to update the communication history? You won't get this prompt if you're on the essentials level of the software because you don't have the communications tab. But on the other levels, you will get this option. So within the customer record, you will have a communications tab where you can see the fact that you've sent a statement. So I'll just use no for the time being, and that would be it done. Now there are options for on how you amend the email settings. I'll tell you more about that later because we've got a session on Thursday afternoon where we're looking at amending the email settings for your statements. And once you've learned how to amend email settings, you can then apply that to your other types of layouts as well. So same would go for things like your letters, for instance, or you're doing invoices or orders. So I'll tell you more about that, and the link will be included on the follow-up email as well. But anyway, that would be how quick it would be if I was emailing it. That's how quick it would be to potentially do a statement run. Select the layout, output to email, just let the progress bar run through. Done. Obviously, that's probably a little bit quicker than you could probably even just print one statement out. Obviously, the more customers included, the bigger you set the data, it's going to take a little bit longer than maybe what mine was showing. Any questions so far on what we covered? So the key is find the layout, the one that best suits your purposes. And even if you think, well, actually none of them are quite there, find the one that's closest to what you want. You can always amend it using the report designer, but it's much easier to find a layout that's similar to or very close to what you want and then amend that than it would be to start from scratch. So find a one that's close to what you want in the format you want. Make sure that it includes the type of information you want in the main body, and then you can take it from there. Right, no additional questions just at that point. So I'm going to pop back to the slides just for a moment. And for what we've already covered with regard to selecting customers, the selection style, etc., print versus email, it's pretty much the same. Rebecca, you were just asking about emailing there. Where did it actually go to? So what I'm doing today is, and some of your layouts. So the statement layout I selected. So in this case, it's the which one was it? It's one of the plain paper ones, which is actually designed for printing or emailing out. Again, you can tweak it if you need to, design-wise. But I've got mine integrated with Outlook. So essentially, when you're integrating with Outlook, you can either have it go into your drafts folder. So let me just open my Outlook, and I'll share it with you as well, so you can see that. It's coming up on the right screen, so let's just get rid of that. But what it's done for my statements is it's generated them and popped them in my drafts folder. You can set your statements so that they are just sent automatically. So again, that's what we're covering later this week on the Thursday, and also Thursday next week. So we've got 2 specific sessions looking at emailing out statements. Naomi, you mentioned as well also about your customer would, when you go to email your invoices, your customers asked where you've got multiple invoices, they want to be emailed them individually. Yeah, you can do that. I would encourage you to watch Emailing Invoices Part 2 for that one. So we've got a recording on that one. So do watch that when you get your follow-up. It'll show you exactly what you need to do. It's all to do with the grouping on the email settings within the layout itself, that one. So you just need to change your grouping so that it splits them. So if you've got like, for instance, let's say you've got 8 invoices and you want to email them all out to the one customer, it'll, depending on the grouping, it'll either group them all together and send it on one email, or it will split them and generate 8 separate emails with the relevant invoice attached. So you do have that choice, but that's to do with the grouping within the email settings. But again, that's covered in Emailing Invoices Part 2. So do check that out on the recordings list. You mentioned there as well, you assume that that will only work if you're synced with Outlook. No. You can, if you're integrating with webmail or anything like that, you can do a similar. If you're talking about when it outputs to the drafts folder, that's a feature of Outlook only. You only have that option if you're integrating with Outlook. With the likes of webmail, for instance, like Gmail or Hotmail, for instance, if you're integrating with that, it will send it automatically. So as soon as you output to email, it'll essentially send it. So you've got similar options, just works slightly differently behind the scenes, depending on what you integrate with. Hope that makes sense. Right, let's just close out of my email for the time being. So again, if you've downloaded those statements, the handout, the slides, these buttons at the bottom, they will work for you. They'll link off to the relevant help article for you. Let's quickly cover letters. So generating letters and selecting your customers, pretty much the same. It's all about choosing your template that you want to use. Let's just have a quick look at them. You can customize your letters. You can create new letters as well. You might use them for different purposes. I'll quickly run you through just so you can see the standard ones. So let's get back to my screen, which is clear to remove the highlights, and I'll just highlight those 3 at the top. So pretty much the way that you would access your statements, I'm going to go into Documents and Reports, select the Letters option. Again, favorites is blank. It will be by default when you first go in. And then if I just click Letters on the side, it will give me a list of the ones that we've got. So there's quite a few in here. Some of them you might never use. So things like if you're not a charity, so you're not involved in gift aid, then the gift aid declaration letter wouldn't be applicable to you. Similarly, at the bottom, there's things like for transaction emails. So there's a few letters being added over the years depending on what it is you're after, but you can design your own as well. You can amend the ones that are there as well. So if you want to change the wording of them slightly. So if you look at a letter and you think, oh, it's a bit harsh, the wording of that one, or maybe you want to word it a bit more harsh, or you need to provide specific information in addition to what's included, you can do that. You can edit your layout, your letter layout, make whatever changes you need. But let's just pick on this address change as an example. Again, let's just preview it just so we can see it. So it works in pretty much the same way. So this one, because I've just previewed it, it says it's page 1 of 2. So in this case, it's generated 2 letters. So again, all of this information, you might want to include a logo, etc. You can include it. So again, that would go down the route of printing. So you're in the same sort of position as before, print versus email. But again, with emails, if I wanted to email this one out, as long as the customers have an email address entered, if I went and output to email, it's going to generate them for me, and it'll split them for me as well, depending on, again, on the grouping settings within the design of the letter itself. So it tells me the report has been successfully output to email. So if you want to send a message to your customers, not specific about an outstanding balance or anything, it might be that you want to send an email out that just says, right, these are our opening hours over the sort of the Christmas period, or other information that you want to send out. You might have details of special offers that you want to send out, new services that you provide. You could design a letter to essentially do that for you. So manage it from within Sage, as opposed to just generating it manually in your email software. Now, let's say I did want to make a change. We'll just highlight whichever letter it is I want to use. So find the one that's closest to what you want. Highlight it. You would go into edit. It takes you into the report designer, shows you the design of that, and then you can start making whatever changes you want. Again, there are some shorter webinars available in the recordings, which would guide you through that type of thing. Just bear with me one moment there, please. Sorry about that. Right, so if you wanted to insert your logo or change the text or maybe put additional information on, you can do that pretty much. Loads of supporting information in our help center as well, should you need that. Any questions on letters at all? Now, when you're using letters as well, if you're going to be emailing out, what's quite common is that people will include the text in the main body of rather than attach the letter as a PDF copy, quite common to just attach the text itself in the main body of the email itself. And again, those are options that you have when editing the email settings within the report designer itself. But have a go of them as well. Right, Naomi, you mentioned some of your customers don't have an email address, so you send those ones by post. And this one comes back to your selection options. So can you see on mine, I've got this email. Let's just hide some additional columns. Actually, I'll scroll across it. See. So I've got this email or print column. Now, what this relates to is if I just pop into one of the records, it's this one here, this little checkbox at the bottom. I send letters, statements, etc. to this customer via email. Now, if you tick that box and save it, what it will do is it will show as email on the list here. If you don't have it ticked, it will show as print. So potentially what you could do before you go to do a statement run, for instance, is you could sort by that column, make it quite easy to select them, or you could even apply a filter and do something like where, see if it's there. Can never find it. Is it print? See if I can find the relevant field. It would be one of the days when I just cannot see it for looking. Oh, there it is. So I'll put where send letters to this account via email is equal to yes. Now, if I apply that filter, it then filters that list here. So that would be a good option for you, Naomi. Good way of selecting them. So I've now only got the ones that are flagged to receive it via email listed. If I switch that around, so I'll go back into filter and I would say either is equal to no. I click apply. And what I've now got is all of my customers where I print it. So it means that I could apply that filter before I start even doing statements or letters. So I think that's the one you're looking for. If I switch that filter off, clicking on the little sort of funnel icon at the top, I'm back to all of my customers being listed. So a good little technique, that one. Also, that little flag that we mentioned there, the little checkbox within the record. So just confirming where it is. It's this one at the bottom here beneath the email addresses. If you tick it, it's going to say email on the list. If you don't tick it, it'll say print. And that feeds through to the likes of invoices as well, for instance. So I can see on this list which of the customers are flagged to have their invoices emailed out and which ones aren't. So I can make that choice. So again, hopefully that will, if you are printing as well, it'll save you printing out loads that are probably going via email. So it'll save you a bit of time. So good little tip. Again, if you want to learn more about filters as well, so using these options at the top to filter your records and how they're listed, there are recordings available on those. So good little tip to learn a little bit about that as well. Makes your reporting that much more flexible. Right, okay, let's just pop back to the slides for a moment. Now, if you've got any questions, keep them coming. I'll hang around for about another few minutes anyway, to see if any additional questions do come through. I think I've picked them up so far, the ones that have been submitted. If you weren't quite with us at the beginning of the session, you can submit your questions by just clicking on the little icon, the one that looks speech bubble containing the question mark, give it a click, and then if you start typing in the box in the bottom right-hand corner. So type it in, click send, should just pop up on my screen there. To give you an idea of some of the sessions we've got coming up, particularly relating to statements. So Thursday this week, we're looking at emailing statements. So looking at that in a bit more detail, and also how to amend your email settings that are assigned to your layout using the settings email defaults option. So that sort of covers I suppose the basics if you need to amend those settings. Thursday next week, so 30th, so again, afternoon session at 2 o'clock, we'll be looking at emailing statements part 2, which is then looking at amending your statement layout, the email settings assigned to that layout from within the report designer. So that would be useful if you want to send your statement to maybe two of your customer email addresses, or maybe you want to copy in your mailbox or something like that, so that you've got a copy of what was emailed out. So we'll be looking at that on the 30th. Links are included on your follow-up email, so do get yourself registered if you are interested. Loads of other sessions as well, quite a few surrounding the banking area. So bank feeds, there's a big push on that at the moment. It can be a big time saver. We've got a session this afternoon on bank feeds rules, so specifically looking at the rules element of the bank feeds. So we've got a half-hour session on that one this afternoon. Bank reconciliation, that's tomorrow. So if you're doing it manually, or you want more information about how you can do it manually, maybe you've been doing it manually and you think, actually, I'll come along just to see if I pick up any tips, or even just to give you that reassurance that your understanding and the way that you do it is right. So again, come along, get yourself signed up, free to attend as normal, and hopefully you'll go away feeling a lot more confident. But loads of other sessions as well. We'll shortly be releasing our December timetable. That should be done by the end of this week. So keep an eye out on the links that you're provided with on the follow-up email. Right, last call for questions. So another one from Naomi there. Just mentioned there, you noticed that I have the option for several email addresses per customer. You mentioned you have only 2 for invoices and 1 for statement. Do you have more of you on the professional level? The answer to that one is no. So let me just quickly show you. If I find the right option to share my screen. So when I go into a customer record, by default, these are called email 1, 2, 3, and on my version, 4, 5, 6. So on version 28.2, we increased the number of email fields from 3 to 6. Again, we had loads of requests for that. You need more than just the standard 3. So if you're on 28.2, doesn't matter what level of the software you're on, doesn't matter whether you're on Essentials, Standard, or Professional. In fact, I'll quickly show you that one, just to demo that one. I'll get back to my desktop. So I've got my version 28 set up as the Essentials level of the software. Should be 28.2 as well. So if I go into my, just my luck, if I go into a customer record, it's 28.2. But I'll double check that, and I'll let you know, Naomi. I'll double check it. I'm sure it was 28.2 where that changed, but I'll double check it and I'll drop you an email. With regard to that though, if I just go back to my version, my latest one. With regard to sort of the email fields, which is that one we're looking at, let's pop into that customer account. So where you mentioned you've got, if we'll pop into this one, where you mentioned you've got 2 for invoices and 1 for statement, what you can do is you can change the title of these. So if they are used for different purposes, so if everyone else's is just saying email 1, email 2, email 3, you can change the titles of those fields. All you would need to do is go into settings and then configuration at the top. And if I can find it, email at the top. And rather than it just be called email 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, depending on your version you're on, you can come in and say, so if I wanted to say that one was for invoices, and then email address 2 is where I key the email address in that I want to use for statements, I can do that. So I just OK that. And when I now go back to customers, you can see the titles of those fields have actually changed. Now, just because I've typed statements in there, it doesn't mean that the layout will pick that up. All of your layouts where they're configured for email, by default, they will always use email address 1. So again, if you're looking to change that type of thing, or even send it to multiple email addresses that are recorded within the record, get yourself along to emailing statements part 1 and also part 2. We'll show you how to amend those settings. Now, that was the only question that I did have outstanding there, so I will confirm that one for you, Naomi. I'll drop you an email. If you think of anything after you leave the session, do get in touch. You can use our help center, loads of information in there. And there's obviously our support team is available as well. So if you've got a very specific query, which when you're talking about the design of layouts, you tend to find they'll be specific to you, then do get in touch with our support team. Right, let me just make sure I'm sharing the right screen. So it just brings me to the end of the session. We'll wrap it up at that point. Thanks for coming along. I hope you have enjoyed it. Giving you maybe some food for thought as well. There will be a little survey pop up as you leave the session today. So if you could take a minute to complete that, share your thoughts, your ideas, what you thought of the webinar, etc. Always good to read those comments that you leave, just to see if we're hitting the mark or not, or how you think we could maybe improve the webinar going forward. Let me know. So if you take a minute to do that, really appreciate it. Your follow-up email will be with you in round about an hour's time. That will include the links to register for other webinars and also so you can watch the recordings. So watch out for that one. Right, we'll end the webinar at that point. Many thanks for coming along. Take care, stay safe, and hopefully we'll see you on some other sessions soon. Many thanks.